In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the rear center brake hose on this Ford Excursion. This is the one that goes from your frame down to your rear axle and connects both of your rear brake lines right here. Let's get started. Both of your rear brake hoses connect to this right here. Let's get started. On this old brake hose, I like to crimp it somewhere around here. That way, when we do disconnect everything at the bottom, we don't lose a lot of brake fluid. There will still be some loss, but this limits it. If you don't have these hose crimping pliers, you can use some locking pliers or anything that you might have that'll squeeze onto this. Moving down, you'll see both of your rear brake lines connecting to this hose. So we can get a little bit better view, I'm going to try to remove this breather tube or breather line from the hold down. Just wiggle it and take that off, set it aside. Use an 11mm flare nut wrench to try to break these fittings free. What you're looking for here, and I already sprayed it all with rust penetrant, is for the fitting to spin independently of the line. You don't want it to twist the whole line with it. See, that twisted it a little bit. However, the line is free, so that is perfect. We're going to keep undoing this until the fitting is completely off. Now, even though we did pinch off that brake hose, there still might be some fluid left over in the system that's going to leak out, so make sure you have a collection bucket to catch that as this comes off. Work it back and forth if needed. That should help loosen things up if yours is corroded. There's one side. Set that aside. Now with this side loosened up, let's remove the brake line off of the other side. Same wrench, 11mm. Break this free. To make things easier, once it's broken free, if you can't spin it by hand, you can use a regular open-ended wrench. And take this brake line out. All right, set this aside. You can bend them just a little bit to get them out of the way if you need to. At this point, we need to remove this breather, which is also the hold-down bolt for this brake hose. You're going to have to use a 14mm socket on this. It's probably going to have to be a deep socket unless your shallow is deep enough to fit over that. Make sure it's seated all the way, and let's break it free. Turn it counterclockwise. Now, it broke free from the threads, but what often happens is this actually seizes right where it goes through. It's hollow on the sides, but right through here, the bolt will actually seize in place. So what I'm going to try to do is loosen it up, take a hammer, and just tap this to hopefully break it free. I'm going to try to put some locking pliers on this to hopefully be able to hold it a little bit better as it tries to spin. I don't want it to spin, I want it to stay so I can just spin the bolt. Let's try this again. All right, there we go. That's better. Definitely quite corroded. Still reusable, we'll just clean it up with a wire wheel. There's your brake hose, or at least the bottom part of it. If you follow the brake hose up, you'll see where it connects onto the brake line. Now, I sprayed all of this with rust penetrant because it is quite rusted. I'm going to hold the bracket with some pliers so it doesn't bend. Usually when you put pressure on this, the bracket starts bending. And this is supposed to be an 11mm fitting, but it's pretty rounded off. So I'm going to put some locking pliers on it and break it free that way. I'm going to try my best to hold this in place. All right, so the threads broke free. Now the issue is trying to get the fitting to break free off the line. So let's see if we can work this back and forth. It is quite rusted, and surprisingly, it looks like it did break free, which is great. Now, I don't want to pull this all the way out. I know it will come out. What I want to do next is, before this starts dripping a bunch of brake fluid, is remove this little locking clip that holds the brake hose onto the bracket. So this can be ready to go. And now this is ready to go, so we can just quickly swap them from the old to the new. Use a pry bar and a hammer and try to tap this clip out. There it is. Now take that same hammer, tap the line so you can break it free from this bracket. All right. With this broken free, let's continue removing this fitting until we can separate these two. Keep in mind, brake fluid will leak once you disconnect this, so have a collection bucket underneath ready to catch this fluid. All right, there's your line, and there's the hose. Take your new brake hose, slide it up into position. Try to line up the brake hose with this bracket. It's got a cutout that it has to line up with. It doesn't just go in any direction. There we go. Put your brake line in and start it on. With it in position here, snug it up with some, well, with your wrench. I unfortunately have to use some pliers, just so it can stop leaking, and then we'll lock it in with that clip. And once it's locked in, we'll be able to actually put a little bit of pressure into it and snug that fitting down. Tap this in. And snug it up. There we go. Just give it about a quarter turn after it got tight. That should press that fitting nice and tight in there. Clean this off with brake parts cleaner so that you know if there is a leak. Now grab the brake hose on the bottom, put that breather through. I put a little bit of grease on it, that way it is less likely to corrode. And thread it in. Make sure that this is facing the way it's supposed to face with the two fittings towards the top. Get this tightened up. That's snug. Give it just a little extra. You don't need to crush this down a lot. You definitely don't want to destroy the threads that are in the differential. As long as this is held on, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to wait to put the breather tube on until the brake lines go on, just so we have much better access to them. Slide in one of them, and let's snug this down. Use that 11mm wrench, tighten up the fitting. All right, that's snug. Let's get the other one in. All right, snug this up. Let's put our breather tube back on here once everything is connected. Make sure it's secured, and let's clean all this area off with brake parts cleaner so that we get rid of all the brake fluid. Just in case there's a leak, then we can see it. Clean the fittings, the hose a little bit, and just in general around where it leaked. Once again, so you can see if there is ever a leak. Use a 21mm socket, remove all 8 lug nuts, and then pull the wheel off. Now open up the bleeder screw on the caliper so we can purge the air out of it, or bleed it. And we're going to have a bucket underneath. This is called a gravity bleed. We'll let gravity pull fluid in, fill the lines, fill the caliper, and get the fluid and the air out of the system through this bleeder screw. Now this should get most, if not all, of the air out. However, you may still need to do a full manual brake bleed at the end of the job, and you'll see how to do this at the end of the video. For now, let's just wait for our gravity bleed until there are no more air bubbles and a steady trickle of clean fluid coming out of the bleeder screw. There's our steady trickle of fluid. I'm going to give this another 5 to 10 seconds to make sure there are no air bubbles stuck in the system. Now that you've done one side, do the same to the other side so we can bleed both, since we disconnected both brake lines on both calipers, of course, in the rear. All right, that's plenty. Let's close this off. When you close this, you don't want to tighten it too much, just snug it until it bottoms out, and then we'll clean this area with some brake parts cleaner so that it can be free of any brake fluid. Spray it down. Underneath the hood, on the driver's side of the engine compartment, you'll find your master cylinder reservoir. Wipe it off if it has a lot of debris. You don't want that contaminating the fluid that's in here. Turn the cap counterclockwise and pull it off. If you read carefully, you'll see that it says to only use .3 brake fluid, so make sure that's what you have on hand and make sure you have plenty of it because this is quite a large master cylinder reservoir. Now let's top off the master cylinder up to the max line. Reinstall the cap. Let's get the wheel back on. Start on all 8 lug nuts. We'll bottom them out in a cross pattern so the wheel can seat evenly, and then torque them to 148 foot-pounds, also in a cross pattern. A 148 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Here we go. Double check them if you'd like. Underneath the hood, on the driver's side of the engine compartment, you'll find your master cylinder reservoir. Wipe it off if it has a lot of debris. You don't want that contaminating the fluid that's in here. Turn the cap counterclockwise and pull it off. If you read carefully, you'll see that it says to only use .3 brake fluid, so make sure that's what you have on hand and make sure you have plenty of it because this is quite a large master cylinder reservoir. Next, I want to remove all of the brake fluid that's here, and you can do that by using either a vacuum pump with a little reservoir on it or a fluid transfer pump, whatever you have that's going to get in here with a little hose and remove the fluid. Now fill up the master cylinder with .3 brake fluid all the way to the max line. Reinstall the cap. It's time to start bleeding these calipers, and on this vehicle we want to start at the right rear wheel. That's the passenger side rear. After bleeding that caliper, move over to the left rear. Then you're going to top off the master cylinder, make sure it stays full. Then move over to the right front caliper, bleed that, and the last one will be the left front caliper. At that point, you're going to want to top the master cylinder off again and feel the pedal. If it feels like there's still air in the system, continue bleeding in the same sequence, basically just repeat it until you're satisfied with the brake pedal feel. Now we have an assistant inside the vehicle ready to pump up the brake pedal and hold pressure. After a few pumps, as they hold, I'm going to open up the bleeder screw and fluid, potentially air, will come out of this bleeder screw. I also have this collection receptacle with a hose attached to it so I don't make a mess, but of course a collection bucket would work just fine as well. At this point, I'm going to wait for them to tell me they're ready to hold. All right, they're holding pressure. So open this up with a 10mm wrench. There we go, we got some air. Go ahead and pump again. All right, they're holding. We're going to do this until there are no more air bubbles coming out of the bleeder screw. Okay, go again. Holding. Okay, this was clean. Let's do it one last time. Go ahead and pump. Perfect. You can let go of the brake pedal now. I snugged this back up. I'm going to remove my collection hose. Now, if your brake caliper had a cover, of course you'd want to cover this back up. For me, I'm just going to wipe this down, make sure there's no brake fluid. If there is any, you can use some brake parts cleaner and rinse it off. And at this point, you would do the same exact thing to the other side, that is the left rear caliper, and then of course top off the master cylinder after you've bled both of these rears. Now let's top off the master cylinder up to the max line. Reinstall the cap. Now we're at the right front caliper. We have bled both rears and topped off the master cylinder. So let's take the cap, or the boot, off of this bleeder screw. This one has one, so we're going to save it. And I'm going to put my hose on here. This also takes a 10mm wrench to break free. I'm going to have my assistant pump up the brake pedal now and create pressure. Go ahead and pump. All right, they're holding pressure, so I'm going to open this up. All right, lots of air on this one. Go ahead and pump again. All right, this one was clean at the end. Let's do it one more time. Go ahead and pump. This was good. Let's do it one last time. Go ahead and pump. Perfect. You can let go of the brake pedal now. I got nice clean fluid. I'm going to remove my hose, wipe this off, spray it down if necessary, and cover this back up so that it doesn't get clogged up and rust. At this point, we're going to bleed the left front, do the caliper the exact same way, and then we'll top off the master cylinder one last time. Top off the master cylinder all the way to the max line. Right about there. Perfect. We'll cap this off. At this point, if you are unsatisfied with how the brake pedal feels, you think there's more air, repeat the bleed in the same exact sequence until you are satisfied. And of course, don't forget to keep that master cylinder topped off at all times. Now put the wheels back on. The wheel torque is 148 foot-pounds on all four wheels.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.